Imagine an aircraft that has, spent the last 40 years climbing to a cruising altitude of, say, 30,000 feet.
Right.
Its engines have been just roaring, burning fuel, fighting gravity to get as high up as possible. And that is your working life. That's the accumulation
That
phase.
makes sense.
But the day you retire, you essentially cut the engines. You are now a glider.
Right.
And the physics of gliding are just entirely different from the physics of climbing.
Completely different. Yeah.
Because when you don't have that forward thrust of a regular paycheck anymore, your survival isn't about power. It's about aerodynamics. I mean, it is about eliminating every single source of drag. Because any friction will pull you out of the sky exponentially faster than you realize.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize the shift.
Yeah.
You spend decades focused almost exclusively on financial offense. You're amassing wealth, chasing returns, like maximizing your deposits.
Right, exactly.
But the moment you transition into retirement, the entire game flips to defense. And if you don't adjust your mindset to match that new reality, well, the altitude you worked so hard to achieve will just vanish.
Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to this deep dive. Whether you are actively navigating your golden years right now, preparing for the transition, or you're just a naturally curious learner trying to master the mechanics of personal finance, you are in the exact right place today.
Absolutely.
Today, our mission is to inspect the aerodynamics of your financial glider. We are analyzing a stack of excerpts from the book Safeguarding Your Golden Years, a retirement spending guide.
It's a great one.
It really is. Specifically, we're tearing into a list of 22 things retirees need to stop spending money on immediately. And frankly, this isn't about clipping coupons or sitting in the dark to save a few pennies on the electric bill. It's about identifying structural inefficiencies.
Precisely. The source text is brilliant because it categorizes these financial threats by the underlying mechanism of loss. It argues that true retirement security isn't just a matter of having a massive portfolio. It's about vigorously defending the capital you have.
Defending it, yeah.
Right. And it starts by addressing the macro threats.
Yeah.
The massive sources of drag that can mathematically ruin a retirement before it even really begins.
And the most aggressive form of drag on this list is high interest debt, like credit cards or variable rate personal loans. But the book doesn't just say debt is bad, which, we all know.
Right.
It looks at how high interest debt interacts catastrophically with the mechanics of retirement drawdowns. When you're drawing a fixed income from a portfolio and the market drops, you experience sequence of returns risk.
Yes, that is the lethal combination right there.
Yeah.
Sequence of returns risk means that if you experience negative market returns early in your retirement, selling off your assets to cover living expenses permanently damages your portfolio's ability to recover.
Because you have fewer shares to rebound when the market goes back up.
Exactly. Now, inject high-interest debt into that exact scenario. If you are forced to liquidate investments during a market downturn, locking in those losses, by the way, simply to service a credit card charging 18 or 20% interest, you are effectively setting off a financial death spiral.
Oh, wow. A death spiral.
It really is. It's an active theft of your own future stability. Because every dollar of interest paid from a shrinking portfolio requires selling an exponentially larger number of shares to cover it.
It just fundamentally breaks the math of early retirement. It's like trying to fill a bucket that has a massive hole blown in the bottom.
Yes, perfect analogy.
The text also points to expensive mortgage payments as another massive macro threat, which is kind of counterintuitive. I mean, a mortgage is generally considered good debt, usually at a fixed rate. People view it as a perfectly safe, stable contract.
Well, it is an illusion of safety, particularly in fluctuating economic environments. The text highlights that holding on to a massive mortgage simply because it feels normal often ignores the reality of cash flow.
Cash flow is king.
Always. And in retirement, cash flow flexibility is your greatest defensive asset. When a huge percentage of your monthly liquidity is locked into servicing a mortgage, you lose that flexibility. The author urges retirees to ruthlessly analyze whether refinancing or aggressively downsizing makes more mathematical sense than, arbitraging their portfolio returns against their mortgage interest rate. Often, retirees just keep paying a premium for space they no longer use simply due to inertia.
That makes me think of another massive expense people just accept due to inertia. But I have to push back on this one.
Oh.
Yeah, the source lists advisor fees as a critical structural threat to a portfolio. Wait, aren't financial advisors supposed to protect our money? How do we know when the fee is actually a threat and not just the necessary cost of doing business?
What's fascinating here is the sheer mathematical brutality of percentage-based fees over a long time horizon. The text explicitly warns about the mechanics of reverse compound interest.
Reverse compound interest. Yikes.
Let's look at the numbers. If you are following a standard safe withdrawal rate, you might be pulling 4% of your portfolio a year to live on.
Okay, standard 4% rule.
Right. But if your financial advisor is charging a 1% assets under management fee, they aren't taking 1% of your returns. They are confiscating 1 full % of your total
All
assets.
right.
That means 25% of your total acceptable yearly drawdown is going straight into their pocket.
Wait, let me wrap my head around that. If I can only safely withdraw 4% and they take 1% of the total pie, they're eating a quarter of my usable income for the year.
Exactly, a full quarter. And if your portfolio grows at, say, 6% and inflation runs at 3%, your real inflation-adjusted return is 3%. So an advisor taking 1 or 1.5% is literally swallowing half of your real wealth generation.
Yeah.
The source isn't claiming that all advisors are malicious, though. It is issuing a directive to calculate the true mathematical drag of their fees.
See what you're actually getting.
Yes.
Okay.
If your advisor is providing complex tax loss harvesting, estate planning, and actively protecting you from behavioral mistakes during a crash, that fee might clear the hurdle rate.
Mm.
But if you are paying a premium percentage for a generic automated portfolio of index funds, you have a massive structural leak.
It's the difference between paying for a vital service and simply bleeding capital because you're too afraid to look at the numbers.
Precisely.
And that idea of bleeding capital passively transitions us into the next layer of threats. We've talked about the big structural contracts, debts, mortgages, advisory agreements, but the book identifies a whole secondary category of loss that doesn't rely on contracts at all. It relies on your complacency.
Ah, yes, the set it and forget it trap.
Right.
Once we secure the macro foundation, we enter the realm of stealthy external drains.
Yeah.
This is a layer of financial loss driven entirely by the psychology of inertia and, frankly, the predatory nature of modern corporate models.
Let's talk about the most predatory first, scams and fraud. The text notes that retirees are overwhelmingly the prime targets for impersonation schemes, fake investments, and digital fraud.
Unfortunately, yes,
But it doesn't just offer the useless advice of, be careful. It highlights that these criminals specifically exploit cognitive friction.
they do. Fraudsters engineer their attacks to create artificial urgency, totally bypassing logical evaluation. And the text emphasizes that the only effective defense is structural, not behavioral.
You can't just trust yourself to spot it.
No, you cannot rely purely on your own skepticism on a bad day. Protecting your assets requires active technological barriers. Things like freezing credit reports by default, utilizing password managers so you never rely on human memory, and enforcing multi-factor authentication across all financial touchpoints. It treats fraud not as a mistake you might make, but as an inevitable siege you must build walls against.
Wow, an inevitable siege. But the source then pivots from actual literal criminals to an industry that operates in a very gray area, and this part fascinated me. Timeshares?
Oh, the timeshares.
Yeah, we've all... But the author categorizes timeshares in retirement as a massive financial trap.
Because they are a textbook example of a liability disguised as an asset.
Oh, for sure.
The text tears down the illusion of timeshares by focusing on their structure. They are highly illiquid contracts with uncapped ongoing liabilities. When you buy a timeshare, you are rarely buying real equity. You are buying the obligation to pay maintenance fees that historically outpace inflation.
Which is wild.
And furthermore, you're subject to sudden special assessments for property repairs, which you have absolutely no control over.
Right.
So what might have been a manageable expense during your high-earning years becomes a rigid, mandatory drain on a fixed income. The author warns that these can even complicate estate planning, as you are essentially trying to bequeath a perpetual financial obligation to your heirs.
Which is basically a curse. And it's that exact mechanism, an ongoing escalating fee that you just get used to paying that the source points out in so many other industries.
Definitely.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The book dives into auto insurance overpayments and outdated bank accounts, arguing that the concept of brand loyalty has been completely inverted. We grew up thinking that if you stay with a company for 20 years, they will reward your loyalty. But the reality is they weaponize it against you.
It's called algorithmic price optimization. Or, well, the loyalty
It's
penalty.
a loyalty penalty. That hurts.
It really exposes a fundamental truth about modern corporate behavior. Insurance companies and financial institutions use vast amounts of data to calculate your price elasticity. If their algorithms see that you have renewed your auto or home insurance automatically for the last decade without ever requesting a competing quote,
They know you're not leaving.
exactly, they mathematically classify you as highly unlikely to leave. Therefore, they systematically and quietly raise your premiums year after year, fully aware you aren't paying attention.
They are literally monetizing your complacency. You are paying a premium simply because you are too trusting or, honestly, too tired to shop around.
Yes.
And the same logic applies to unused subscriptions, right?
Completely. Subscription models are psychologically engineered to exploit sunk cost fallacies and cognitive friction.
It's so true.
It is intentionally easy to sign up and annoyingly difficult to cancel. Whether it is a streaming service, a premium magazine, or a bank account charging a monthly maintenance fee while offering a 0.01% interest rate, these are recurring structural drains.
Yeah.
A scammer stealing your credit card to buy a television and a corporation charging you $12 a month for a service you haven't used in 4 years are mathematically doing the exact same thing to your portfolio. They're extracting capital without your active present-day consent.
It is wild to think about a neglected streaming subscription and a cyber criminal operating on the same mathematical principle, but you're right, it's unauthorized extraction. So we've patched the structural debt and we've closed the digital leaks. But the text then points out that this exact same dynamic, ignoring something until it costs you dearly, happens in the physical world. Specifically, the massive money pit that is homeownership.
The physical asset requires just as much strategic defense as the financial assets. You cannot optimize your portfolio while allowing the roof over your head to quietly rot away.
True.
The author treats personal real estate through the lens of CapEx versus OpEx, capital expenditures versus operating expenses.
Let's get into the weeds on that because the book gets very specific about mundane things like roof and gutter maintenance. It points out that ignoring a minor roof issue doesn't save you money. It just defers the cost while attaching a massive compounding interest rate of physical damage.
Right.
A missing shingle turns into water intrusion, which turns into black mold, which turns into compromised structural integrity. Suddenly, a $500 preventative fix becomes a $30,000 catastrophic remediation.
And that $30,000 remediation has to be pulled from your retirement portfolio, which likely triggers capital gains taxes, further compounding the financial damage.
Oh, I didn't even think about the taxes.
It's a huge factor. The text emphasizes that preventative maintenance, cleaning gutters, installing leaf guards, sealing drafts, is not an annoying chore. It is an incredibly high-yield financial investment. You're spending a tiny amount of money today to mathematically eliminate a high-probability, high-cost disaster tomorrow. It's the purest form of risk management.
And the book clearly distinguishes between risk management and vanity projects. It has a stark warning about inefficient windows and costly remodeling.
Yes, it does.
Like replacing ancient single-pane windows that hemorrhage your expensive heating and cooling is a defensive move. It permanently lowers your utility bills. But the author strongly warns against prestige remodeling in retirement. It reminds me of dropping $10,000 on custom spinning rims for a minivan that has a failing transmission. I mean, it looks flashy to the neighbors, but it does absolutely nothing to make the vehicle run better, and it ignores the critical underlying mechanics. Are we investing in the house to live better, or just spending money to show off?
This raises an important question about capital allocation. A retiree might justify a massive $70,000 luxury kitchen remodel by saying, well, it adds value to the house.
Right, everyone says that.
But the text forces you to look at the actual return on investment. Aesthetic remodels rarely return more than 50 or 60 cents on the dollar in resale value. You are instantaneously vaporizing $30,000 of your net worth for a purely emotional purchase, disguised as an investment. If a remodel does not meaningfully improve your daily safety, your mobility, or the energy efficiency of the home, the source categorizes it as a highly dangerous leak of capital.
Okay, so we've established the defensive perimeter, we've optimized the debt, shut down the algorithmic loyalty penalties, and secured the physical integrity of the house. Now the book takes us into the kitchen of that secure house, looking at the micro level, the daily granular choices, what the author calls the death by 1,000 cuts.
This section shifts from structural finance into pure behavioral economics. It's about lifestyle creep and the erosion of intentionality.
And here is where I have to throw a flag and push back hard on the text.
Oh, here we go.
Because the very first example the author uses is the classic, heavily mocked trope of daily coffee purchases. It argues that skipping the drive-through and brewing coffee at home saves thousands. Come
I
on.
know, I know.
If a retiree has navigated sequence of returns risk, optimized their tax strategy, and secured their home, is buying a $5 cappuccino really going to sink their financial ship? Are we really doing the avocado toast argument for seniors?
It is a totally valid critique, and it's precisely why that specific piece of financial advice is so polarizing. But if you read the surrounding context in the source, you realize the coffee itself is not the villain here.
Okay, then what is?
The author groups the daily coffee with several other specific behaviors. Consistently paying for premium, high-octane fuel when the car's manual only requires regular unleaded. Endlessly upgrading to the newest smartphone every single year just for the status of the new camera.
Hmm.
Buying designer clothing purely for the label rather than durability. And of course, the steady trickle of lottery tickets or speculative get-rich-quick investments.
Okay, so you're saying it's not about the $5 at the coffee shop. It's about the cognitive state you are in when you spend that $5.
Precisely. It is about frictionless spending. None of these purchases will individually bankrupt a well-constructed portfolio, but the author targets them because they represent a loss of financial mindfulness.
Ah, I see.
When you drop $5 here, $20 there, and $100 on an unnecessary tech upgrade without a second thought, you are exercising the muscle of mindless consumption. You lose the habit of evaluating value. The text isn't telling you to stop experiencing joy. If a daily artisan coffee brings you immense, genuine pleasure, budget for it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
But do not buy it mindlessly on autopilot while also mindlessly pumping premium gas, while also mindlessly paying for a brand new tablet you don't actually need.
That distinction is crucial. It's the intentionality that acts as the shield, and the text highlights a really insidious version of this mindless spending when it discusses cashback opportunities and credit card rewards. The author acknowledges that using rewards cards responsibly provides a modest mathematical advantage,
It does.
but they highlight a massive psychological trap.
Behavioral economists call it the licensing effect. The text points out that cashback programs are engineered by credit card companies who understand human psychology much better than we do. Getting 2% cash back makes you feel like a savvy financial operator. It licenses you to feel good.
Oh, man.
And because you feel good, you are highly susceptible to rationalizing a purchase you wouldn't have made otherwise. If you buy a $500 item you do not actually need, simply because you are getting $10 back in rewards, you didn't save $10.
Right.
You unnecessarily vaporized $490 of your capital. The tool, the cashback card, must strictly complement pre-existing disciplined financial habits. The moment it becomes a justification to spend, it is a liability.
It's incredible how every single item on this list, from the massive mortgage all the way down to the 2% cash back, comes back to the exact same theme: conscious evaluation versus passive acceptance. So what does this all mean? If we synthesize all 22 of these drains, how does a listener actually operationalize this into a defense strategy?
The author distills all of these threats into two paramount takeaways in the final chapter. First, the absolute necessity of a personalized, written financial strategy. Not a vague idea in your head, but a concrete plan that defines your required cash flow, establishes your emergency reserves for those home repairs, and strictly separates your necessary operating expenses from your discretionary joy.
Getting it all on paper.
Exactly. Second, and most importantly, is the relentless necessity of regular review. The financial landscape is not static.
Ugh.
Inflation shifts, insurance algorithms change, your own cognitive energy fluctuates.
Yeah.
The most successful retirees, according to the data in the text, are not necessarily the ones who started with the absolute largest nest eggs.
Right.
They're the ones who manage their resources most efficiently through disciplined annual audits of their own behavior.
It's the difference between pointing your glider in a general direction and hoping for the best versus constantly checking your instruments and adjusting the flaps to minimize drag. You have to stay awake at the controls.
And that leads to a final thought I'd like to offer you, something to explore as you audit your own accounts and your own habits. If the ultimate key to lasting retirement security isn't the raw, staggering size of your accumulated wealth, but rather the efficiency of your management and the defense of your resources, well, how does that alter your definition of success?
Hmm.
Consider how redefining the very concept of wealth, moving it away from the exhausting pursuit of having the most money possible and shifting it toward the profound freedom of needing the least to be truly happy and secure might fundamentally transform how you view every single purchase you make from this day forward.
Shifting the goalpost from accumulation to efficiency, needing the least to be truly happy, that is an incredibly powerful framework to operate from. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this conversation has equipped you with the tools to meticulously inspect your own financial aircraft.
I hope so too.
Take the time today to find those areas of drag, from the massive structural inefficiencies down to the microscopic behavioral frictions. Because you've earned your altitude and you deserve a flight path that is smooth, secure, and entirely under your control. We'll catch you next time.